Oh, orientation. It wants us to stay this way. I really don't like horizontal. Because horizontal doesn't let me walk around the same way. That's okay. There we go. Horizontal it is. Go this way. Cool. All right, so I get that window of opportunity. All right.
They'll still feel it.
That's right. They'll be able to hear me, heal me. Whew, already warmed up. All right. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming to Unlocking Your Archery Potential. My name is Dr. Jana Bigliani. I'm a physical therapist at Fluid Physio. And before I went to PT school, I was a strength and conditioning coach working with athletes for speed, agility, power, and strength and mechanics until I got bored and went back to grad school. And here we are. So it seems like we're here to learn a little bit about archery, right? This is a really cool indoor range. So we're going to pick up some points on archery that you may already know, but I might explain them slightly different. And you may find that some of the things that I will say, or the way in which I say certain things, resonate with what your coach or what your partner may be saying that you're doing. And it's like, oh, I never realized. So hence the double seats, because I would like to eventually have someone that you're going to work with as we learn a few things. So we're going to talk about what do we do with the stable base? Why is it important? And range of motion. Why do we need important range of motion? Welcome. Why do we need important? Why is range of motion and strength important? If, most people, if you tell them like, oh, I have to build strength, endurance, and mobility, they're like, well, you're staying still. You're not doing very much. What do you mean you have to do strength training? Hi. But we all know that it definitely requires a lot of strength. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that. And we're going to talk about how do we figure that out for ourselves, right? Because it's easy to watch someone else and say, hey, you're doing this and that, and you may not necessarily feel it. And finally, we're going to talk about a few things that may prevent issues. So most people have issues. There may be 2 people in this room that probably don't have any issues, just 2 people in this room, probably because they're under the age of 30, or maybe not, maybe 20. But other than that, it's just part of us being human and dealing with gravity and time. So, but luckily, I can show you a few things that can tweak a little bit of that so that you can hit better targets. Let's see. So there may be a few things that you guys are much better experts at archery and shooting a bow and arrow than I ever was. My little girl, she's 9, she's loved shooting arrows in our backyard, and so since she was little, she had something not as complicated as yours, but it was just a fun thing, and I never really knew. But knowing mechanics of movement and the human body, that can unlock tons of stuff and knowledge. So some of the terms that I may use, you're like, oh, that's not how you say blah, blah. It's like, oh, because I'm just saying it as a person. So I would love to hear how you guys explain certain terms, or if it's any different. I'd love to learn about that. Great. So let's see. So I don't know. Let's start up by talking about. I just want to get a feel for how many people here have any aches or pains or something physical in their body that stops them from hitting a target, a much better target. Just raise your hands. How many people? Sort of. Yeah?
Who didn't raise their hand?
Well, somebody may not have raised his hand over here because it's a different. Okay. So as I go through what we're going through, I'm going to be speaking very general to a certain sense, take your time and to put those things together I wonder how that applies to my issue, okay? It's one thing to be speaking to a group. It's another to then take a person individually and explain, well, your problem is this. So, hello, welcome. So, we're going to start with, let's see. Well, some of the things that we already know, or you guys most likely know, is we need a stable base, right? Truman, you know what why do you need a stable base?
So when you shoot, you don't have to shoot like another angle.
Right. So we need that stable base. And where is the stable base coming from? All the way from your feet, your hips, the horse. Yeah. I got my oldest rides horses, so I know all about that. So this is is this what you mean by the horse? Like the stands?
Yeah, the stands.
The stands. Okay. See, these are the terms that we're sort of, it's like just a different dialect, but we're talking about the same thing. So good base, right? Good. And so what is that stable base? Two main things in the stable base. We're talking about the center of gravity, right? Right where if you shoot an arrow, in the middle is where we have the same, where gravity is hitting the same force all around, which is not, it's three-dimensional. And then we also have the base of support. So what is the base of support? If we're standing, right, it's a straight line that you can draw a circle all around your shoes and your feet. So people that have bigger feet, yeah, they probably have a bigger base of support if their feet are a little bit longer. But it also depends, how high is your center of gravity? Because if you have big feet and you're really tall, that's going to throw you off. And so all the stability that you thought you were getting from big feet, sort of like, oh, now you have to compensate because you're tall. So center of gravity, so the lower to the ground you are, the easier it is. The wider your center of gravity, the easier it is too to keep that balance. So you guys all know that if you stand to shoot with a narrow base, it's kind of weird, right? It's not it feels kind of off, right? If you stand too far, what happens if you stand too far? You get tired. What gets tired if you stand too far? Your legs, yeah. Yeah. So we need that sort of special key of like balance of center of gravity and base of support. And so that's the stable base. Range of motion. Okay. Two main things of range of motion. It's like, okay, well, you don't need tons of hip mobility in archery, right? You do need lots of spine mobility. Well, it's like, well, you're just here. Your spine is nice and centered. Yes, and you still have to start here, right? So have our spine over here. I'm gonna land on this. So the spine, we have 7 cervical vertebrae. Come on, friend. Come show off. So this is the spine. We have 7 cervical vertebrae, or neck. We'll call it the neck. Okay. We have 12 thoracic vertebrae, or the trunk. Those 12. Hello. Welcome. We have some chairs here or over there. Your turn. Okay. We're talking about the spine. How many cervical?
7.
Yes. Nice, Truman. Thank you. I can tell you're going to be total helper. Thank you. 12 thoracic spine. And with those thoracic spine vertebra, that's where the ribs attach. Okay, so 12 ribs in those thoracic spine. And then 5 lumbar that attach, or lower back, that attach to the sacrum, and the sacrum to the pelvis. So the cervical spine can do just about anything. Up, down, side to side, over, right? Cervical spine. The cervical spine are interesting because they actually, so you see how in here I can kind of put my fingers like in between each level? Yeah. The cervical spine They don't have that. It's fused. So the nerves that here come out to the side, they're actually within those little circles. This is the back of our heads. So there is the top two cervical spine are super special because the top one, it's called the atlas for a reason, top, that one accommodates the majority of the movement is up and down. The second one is the axis, and it's called an axis, and I don't know that I can really show you from this angle, but yeah, it's pretty hard to see. So the atlas, the axis underneath it has like a little stick that sticks up inside, and the reason for it, it's hard to see through here, but the reason for it is because the majority of the movement for the axis is going to be this way, okay? And rotation comes along because it rotates about that axis. And so you can't quite, do you see how this side, one side has reds and blues, the other one's just boring white? The reds and blues means where muscles attach. And so here, if we look at the back of our heads, that's got a lot of blues and one little red. That means that's where muscles attach, okay? So you guys can see that one. And one thing that I'll get a little bit closer to you that you won't be able to see unless I get close is the little red and blue lines. See that right there? Really tiny little attachments of muscles. They're right there. You see that? So these little lines over here, can you guys see that one? Those muscles, guess where they attach? Right at the head. And these muscles, it's pretty cool that, you know, well, not cool, but the fact that this is on the left side, what are you guys, most of you, if you're right-handed, holding here, right? And you're turning, so all these little muscles are doing a great load of work. And so if we don't align the spine, one perfectly over the other, have you guys played Jenga? Right? If there's one that's just a little off, it's like all the rest is much easier to throw off. So when we align it, one nice and top, from the pelvis, because they all start all the way over here, to the top, then we can have those muscles be more efficient because they don't have to generate as much force to like hold the head all the way, because if you're over here, that's going to throw it off. And on top of that, so spine mobility, right? The second one is shoulder mobility. But I'm going to lead into the shoulder mobility by saying that the thoracic spine, right at the edge over here, there's little spots where the ribs attach, okay? Sort of ribs kind of come through here. They come around and then they join the sternum in the front, or a bunch of cartilage that still leads up to the sternum. But why that's important, we'll let him come back to his place. The reason that's important is the ribs kind of come like this, right? If you have a rib or a vertebra that's a little bit off, maybe because it's your parents' fault and you had scoliosis. Maybe because you are right-handed and you've done things like this and you always stand like this, or maybe because you happen to have a sport that does everything in one side only. Maybe that kind of rotates your spine a little bit, ever so slightly, that because the shoulder blades, here's the shoulder, this is the right shoulder, the shoulder blade, it's actually the bone where the humerus, this one, stabilizes and creates the shoulder joint. But if the scapula, it just floats, it has just muscles attachments and it floats over the ribs. But if the ribs are like this, the scapula is going to sit like that and it's going to make the shoulder range of motion not be ideal because it's going to throw it off. So the shoulder blade, or the scapula, the fancy name, it's really cool because it only has, it just floats. Let's have another sort of, now it's a little bit more visual because there's not many bony parts you can see on me. So here we have the ribs coming out, and then I want you to just sort of peek at what the shoulders are like. Okay, they're just the flat plays that, again, if you can imagine, if your ribs are ever so slightly rotated, your shoulder is going to be ever so slightly rotated, and it's going to create either impingement in the shoulder, impingement in the neck pain, headaches, all this other unhappy things. So I want so shoulder blade. The shoulder blade has two bony attachments, two real bony attachments. Stay. Okay, two real bony attachments, and I want you guys to feel. So we have the clavicle here, right? The clavicle, and then we have the shoulder. This is the actual shoulder. That's not so much. So I want you guys, the clavicle is a funny little bone. It's pretty, oh man, yes, stay. Pretty irregular in shape, and it moves by rotating and gliding. So I want everybody to put your hand on the hand that's next to the person next to you is going to reach out to the opposite shoulder. Just sort of reach out and follow your clavicle until you feel somewhere else, and just sort of place your hand like this. And then the hand that's on the outside, so you don't hit the other person, I just move your arm and notice how underneath it rotates. Yeah, do you feel that? You get the point? Okay. So most of you, I want everybody to, I won't say this very often, get in like the worst sitting position. So you guys felt the clavicle moving, right? We're going to touch on that in a moment. Get into just sort of like, yeah, like, bleh. Yeah. And two things. We're going to move the arms and just notice how far they go. And if you have impingement, it probably will hurt. Like, So stay in that awful posture and try to open your jaw also. If you exaggerate, it's going to be super obvious. If you're a little bit more upright, it won't be as obvious. Then now we're going to sit up nice and tall. Sit at the edge of your seats. You're going to put your feet on the ground. Yep. Feet on the ground. Ooh, this one's a little harder to pull. Sit on the edge of your seats. Shoulders engaged. Imagine you're stacking up that spine. Chin in a good position. And now bring those arms up. You're definitely reaching further, right? If you have impingement, you're still going to have some pain because we don't know where that's coming from. But big difference, right? And then notice what your jaw does. If you're upright, how does your jaw feel when how much can you open it? A little bit. What? It's a little.
That one is weird to kind of feel though.
Yeah. Yes, I didn't get your name. Tell me your name. John. John said if you sit upright, you can talk more. Yeah, certainly. So posture is super important. And neither one of those had anything to do with the shoulder itself, right? But just by changing where we put our spine, that changed how much movement we had in the shoulder. So same thing. I'm going to have everybody, let's see. Let's sit. All right, so that was range of motion. Got my little notes. One other thing is that was more the scapula and the spine. Well, now we talk about the humerus and the actual shoulder joint. Well, it's kind of like a little hammer. And this is the place where the clavicle attaches to the shoulder blade. Right underneath, that's where the rotator cuff goes in through this tiny little tunnel. It's called a subacromial space, and that's where it attaches to the humerus. It just goes, this is a humerus, it goes like this. 4 little muscles, tiny little muscles. So tiny. We have this one here, so we're going to look at this guy over here. first we have all these big back muscles, right? One of them, your lats, actually attached to the pelvis, which is lining up the pelvis. It's so important to get that strength out to draw the bow because it's a giant muscle, right? But that one has nothing to do with control of the humerus or the control of the actual shoulder. They're tiny little muscles that are the rotator cuff. There's 4 of them that attach all around that humeral head that control the tiny little movements. So when we have a good posture, the large muscles attaching to the scapula or the shoulder blade keep everything stable. And then the large muscles draw the bow while the rotator cuff maintains that stability around the humerus. Okay, and yes, there's a certain amount of strength that you have to have external and internal rotation, but ultimately it's for that stability of the humeral head or the shoulder, that if the base of the shoulder or the shoulder blade itself is not stable, it's either going to get injured or it won't give you an accurate shoot. So there's where that goes, right? So we're going to put that aside. Since we started talking about muscles, now we're going to come back to muscles. And so what would you think, or what do you guys think, what is, for those of you that have been doing this much longer, what muscles are more important to have strength in? The large muscle groups or the small muscle groups? The small muscle? Uh-huh. The small muscle groups? Uh-huh. But now just think of what I just said earlier, right? So we think it's the small muscle groups. Anyone think it's the large muscle groups? All of them. All right, John. But which ones are more important to have strength in? Initially. They're all important. I totally get.
I guess for the drawing portion, the large.
Uh-huh.
More important.
Yeah. So Ram, right? Ram says large muscles, and tell me?
I said if the small muscles hurt, it's going to impact the large muscle.
If the small muscle hurts, the small musculature hurts, it's going to impact how you put your shoulder blade in position, for sure. So what is like chicken or the egg? It's to a certain extent, yes, but it's more important to start working on the large muscles first, because those large muscles, so we talked about the lats. The lats pull things down. And the lat is this super large band of muscle that attaches to the pelvis. And so as it attaches to the pelvis, large muscles are good for stability. So think about this. We definitely want to have the strength in the small muscles. But if we don't have the stable base, well, you can have as strong a rotator cuff as you want, but that's not necessarily going to be as helpful to get you closer to the target, right? So it's good to have small rotator cuff muscles that are strong, but they're not the ones, when you think of going to the gym, it's like, I'm going to beef up the muscles. You don't really beef up the rotator cuff necessarily. You make it strong, but you really want to beef up your core, right? And what is the core? The core is going to be, we have different muscles. We have, this isn't, stay please. It's not your turn. Okay. I'm going to draw it. So core, here's the trunk. And here's my pelvis. You like my drawing? Hip. Other hip. Oh, it's upside down. I don't think I can draw this one upside down. Okay. And then here is going to be shoulder blades and humerus. Ball and socket joints are the hips and the shoulders, right? That's where we get all kinds of stuff. So What are the core muscles? This is from the back and the front. So I'm just going two-dimensional in this one. Core muscles, the one that everybody thinks about is, oh, I got my 8-pack of muscles, right? The rectus, the ones that like summer, everybody's like, oh, I got to build on it. Are they going to do much of anything? Not really. They're just strong to pull down, but that's not bringing us stability to the core. They're very superficial. Let me put this one up. Let's see if he stays up on his own. That's fine. You guys know who I am, where I'm coming from, right? Okay. Okay, so there's that one. They don't do too much stability. The next level in, or external, we're going from the outside in. The next one is external obliques. And external obliques kind of go like this. So I'm going from the front, even though the shoulder blades are in the back, I'm just putting them there for now. So the obliques go in this direction. So if you have your hands, it's like you're putting your hands in your pockets. That's the external obliques. And so through the back, let's do this. We're going to do, this is going to be the front, and this is going to be the back. That will make more sense. Okay, so in the front, we have, here's the manubrium. I haven't drawn in a while. Comes like this, and we have the ribs that come like this, and your clavicle, and a little tip of the scapula. Okay, so we have the front. External obliques are like this in the front. In the back, they kind of come sort of, we have the lat. The lat attaches over around here, and the lat is a big muscle that we were talking about over there, right? But the core or obliques, if these are coming in like this, then through the back, they're kind of going up a little bit. They're not so important from the back, but they're sort of from the sides. External obliques. Internal obliques are just under them. Internal obliques are the opposite direction. So internal obliques from the front, they're going to come like this. Yeah? In the back, they're opposite direction. So in the back, it's like a mirror image, but it's only because of the 3 dimensions, because they're just crossing on the sides, right? But in the back, as I mentioned, the most superficial is the lat. So the lat is going to attach right through here. I just want to make sure I'm in the lat is going to come. The lat goes all the way attached, all the way up there. Because there's all kinds of fascia here from the spine. Okay. The deepest one of them all in the core, it's called the transversus. And the transversus is like this. And it's kind of like if your bottom rib is right here, it goes right underneath it. And it's like this. And so think of the transversus as a girdle. And so if we're sitting at the chair, everybody sit at the edge of the chair. I'll show it too. Yeah, please. At the edge of the chair. Thank you, Truman. Chop, chop. Okay, so if we sit at the edge of the chair, and this might be tricky because it's kind of hard to find sometimes when you haven't really isolated some muscles. If you kind of tighten a little bit, it's going to bring your ribs up a little bit. Now, we can't truly isolate transversus and obliques and internal obliques because they all work together. And that's the idea, that core muscles, for you guys, as you rotate, yes, it's going to be the obliques. The transversus just stabilize the spine from doing this, right? If they're kind of like this, they're trying to hold it together, so it's keeping it from sliding. The obliques, internal and external, are actually rotating from the time that you hold on to it to the time that you're here. Therefore, if we have the hips and we have the hip muscles, that's a whole other topic. We have tons of huge hip muscles, glutes. They're the ones that keep the pelvis stable to the ground. The transverses and the obliques and the core then should be able to rotate while they're on a stable base. So yeah, we need to strengthen our legs to be able to hold any movement together, right? And as we rotate, then we should have, there's other muscles. Now we're going to the back. Oh, it's over here. In the back, we were talking about the lats, right? There are so many layers in the back. The next with the back, we have, we're going to go around the shoulder blade. We have the rhomboids. They kind of go like this. Ooh, that's kind of throwing me off. But the rhomboids attach the shoulder blade. Then we also have the upper traps. We have upper traps that go to your neck. When everybody does like this, those are the ones that get really tight, upper traps. Then we also have middle traps and lower traps. So upper, lower, upper, middle, lower. All the traps attach the shoulder blade onto the spine. They're not really part of the core, but to me, the hip muscles and the shoulder blade muscles are part of our core because that's kind of what we're going to use it for. We're never just going to use our core by itself. We stabilize our core so we can do all kinds of fun stuff with our limbs. So we can do all the core exercises we want, but if we don't engage and really work on the shoulder blade muscles, oh, well then that's going to make the little rotator cuff muscles work really hard, okay? And so in the back, we have a number of layers. The more superficial ones, you're going to see the erector spinae. They go up and down. They start at different levels. Some start from the sacrum to the thoracic. Others start from the thoracic to the cervical, and they go all the way up. As you can see, this one doesn't do a great job in showing us deep thoracic and lumbar musculature, but they sort of go all the way up. Some that are super important to work with the transversus are called the multifidi. And those are so tiny. If I bring back my guy over here, multifidi are so tiny, they are deepest ones. They go from the inside, they go from one level of the spine, and you can see them here, to the next level. So they go one level down and two levels down for one muscle. Super tiny. They're right next to the lumbar spine and the thoracic spine and the cervical spine. Just really tiny little muscles that attach from one level to the other. What do is they stabilize, just kind of like the rotator cuff muscles do. They stabilize the humerus. These kind of stabilize the lumbar spine, but it's so big that one of them isn't going to make a big difference. But it's important to teach them that, oh, they're going to do the better job if the large muscles on the outside hold it together. Yeah? And, well, it's like, oh, that's all great. And how do we know? Stay. Oh, he's not listening. Let's go the other way. Doesn't want to stay anymore. All right, cool. So let's figure out, what do we do about this? How do you guys figure out? It's like, yeah, I know. I know I'm a little bit off, and so how do I fix it? So this is where I'm going to have everybody stand up. I'm going to put some time, spread out a little bit. You can move out to the side or behind your chair, because first we're going to figure out, how does our spine move? So knowing that this is coming, you guys know yourselves best. So if you feel that you're not steady or standing is not my best, just sit down and do it from the chair. It's okay, because we're going to move in directions that may throw you off balance. So just sit. No big deal. So the first thing we're going to do, hips are going to be about hip width apart. Just hip width apart. And actually, let's do this. Let's put your hips in the same distance that you do it when you're shooting. So just a little bit wider for some of you. Okay. So from here, we're going to see what kind of move, how much mobility or where do we lack in mobility. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to bend forward. And I want you guys to notice how far, if something hurts, then you can just take notice and stop. Just go forward and like for some of us, like, oh, this feels good. Are you feeling the back of your hamstrings, the back of your thighs? Are you feeling your back pulling? It's okay to bend your knees a little bit. Good. That's flexion. Now we're going to put our hands in the lower back and go backwards. Extension. How far does it go? And so come back to the center. I want you guys to find a point in the center in front of you and keep an eye on it, because when you go back, it throws your center of gravity off balance and you may not go as far. So if you keep your eyes forward, oh, look, I can go even further because it doesn't throw off your center of gravity. Good. For some of you that spend a lot of time sitting down at like school all day long, that's a hard one because you're forward all the time, right? Unless you have perfect posture, but backwards. So how far do we go? It's like, oh, not very far. Why is backwards so important? Because the spine has 4 curves. Actually, it might be better on this one. Shoulder. This one might be better to see the curves. We have at the neck, the cervical spine goes in, and then the thoracic spine goes out. So we go down. And then the lumbar spine goes in again. And then we have the pelvis and the sacrum that come out. So why is going backwards also important? We go forward so much that it's just as important to go backwards. We may not have the same in degrees, we may not have the same amount of movement, but it's important to have that balance because that's going to help your spine find that center of gravity. Good. So the next one, oh, I know what happened. Now you're turning. The next one, you're going to put your hands at your sides. Okay. And you're going to bend to one side. And I want you to, and you may need to do a couple of times, and you're going to do it to both sides and notice, oh, what feels like a nice stretch, and how is it different? How far does my hand reach down my pants? Does it go by my knee? Does it not go by my knee? And then also notice, is my pelvis moving back when I'm reaching, or is it staying centered? Right? Is it? What's up with the shoulder over there? Look at the shoulder. Now, if you have someone next to you, find a partner next to you that can watch you and see, oh, is it really straight? No, I'm straight. Or is his shoulder leaning forward and coming forward? I don't know. You might have to tell him. Or maybe find another partner because, sometimes. But notice a little bit like, oh, what happens? Now, here's the thing. If we already start in this kind of position, your shoulders are going to be forward a little bit, so that's going to throw you off. So you're going to have to use musculature to get you into a center position to go with that spine mobility. So things to notice is what do we see visually? Ready? Let's see what you got. What do we see visually? And what do we feel? The next thing I want you to notice is my pelvis shifting, or am I going straight to the side? Right? So, what's your name? Vibeb. Did I say it? Good. You were thinking like, oh, this is so easy because I'm super bendy and like, fine. But notice how far, can you keep your pelvis in one position and bend? In one position? Yeah. So can you, instead of, ready? You do it. Side bend. Do you see his pelvis shift? So that's shifting. He's keeping his center of gravity, but he's keeping it by shifting the pelvis in one side and the shoulders on the other, and his center of gravity staying.
Is that good or bad?
It is. It depends on what we want to accomplish, right? Is that a good stable base if it shifts? Not really. It's not going to allow you to get the same, to get as much force out of it if you're shifted here because your spine is not centered, right? We're trying not to shift when we shoot, yes. If anything, this feels like a great hip stretch, which is fine. So notice what happened. Keep your pelvis in one position. Did you know you were doing that? Could you feel it? Like, yeah, but it's not a bad or it just is. So notice what happens. What do you feel if you keep your hips in one position and you lean? Does it feel like, oh, I have to work a little harder to keep it steady? And then you can feel your muscles kind of like, ooh, exerting some more force, right? So that's where we need to have the spine mobility. And we also need to have that motor control that says, oh, well, and strength. Oh, I'm keeping things together. Because the other part is now from the same position, we're just going to turn as far as we can in one side and then the other side. But when you're going to notice that even when you rotate and you think it's just your shoulders, you're even rotating all the way down to your feet and your toes. And when you have no shoes, you can feel this a little bit easier, but I'm sure you can feel them in your shoes. This is also happening, movement from the hips all the way down. Let's say a long time ago you broke your ankle like I did when I was 10. My ankle locks up at a certain position. Well, then that's going to be something that doesn't let me continue and limits that rotation. So when you guys are standing, and now think about what it's like to have your bow and arrows, right? So you're standing, so don't look at me for form. I'm not an archer. I can pick up some points. And you have the bow, right? You set that shoulder blade, right? Before even setting the shoulder blade, what is this doing? And this is what Maynard and I worked a little bit about, is that is it okay if we share a little bit? Do you want to share a little bit?
No.
No, okay, I'll do it. I got it. It's okay. You guys can sit down if you'd like. So, Vano came in with some neck and headaches and stuff like that. It's like, yeah, I've been shooting. It's like, okay, well, this happens to be a sport that you do a lot in one direction, right? Only one direction. So, number one side either moves more than the other and is stronger than the other. So, to prevent issues, we want to try to be balanced, right? So when we shoot, then we finish and we do something in the opposite direction, range of motion mobility, to undo what our fun sports did to us. So when we set the shoulder blade, the first thing I noticed is like, oh yeah, we learned about setting the scapula, right? And then I was like, why are you shifting like this? That threw him off. And I was like, oh, I didn't even realize it. And so it wasn't just sideways. There was like a component from many things that, because I've worked with Vano for a while and he has tons of fun sports, I can see this very similar movement patterns from one sport to the other. So this one kind of wanted to always do this, but then at some point it was an ankle thing that we were trying to change with skating. So they're all connected. And just because you have neck pain doesn't mean that what you're doing in your lower body isn't necessarily contributing to it. If you were doing something that was like once or twice and done, you probably, your ankle, knee, hip, or thing, it wouldn't really make a difference. But when you're standing and you're trying to hold it steady, we want to have your bones support as much of the bow and the arrow so that your muscles can fatigue a lot less. They don't have to exert as much force, right? So you don't have to be as super strong because your bones, your structure is holding it together. But if your structure doesn't bend all the way, let's say your neck turns tons over there. Well, over time, we have all the different segments that if you bend more in one direction, over time, the spine's going to do that. And you're going to think, well, this is center. What do you mean? I feel centered. So it's good to have someone look at you. It's also good to have mirrors when you're practicing. And so notice everybody, and I say sit at the edge of your seat because that helps you sit up tall. Sometimes chairs are not best for all bodies. So everybody sit at the edge of the seat. Nice and good posture. And I want you to use your peripheral vision to find the shoulders and your nose so that when you stay tall and you turn, where does that nose point and how much of your shoulder do you see? Do you think that your chin, is your nose in front of your shoulder? If it's behind your shoulder, you are super bendy, and I've never seen anyone like that. Just saying. But where does it go? And then what happens to the other side when you go the other way? Right? No, because your head probably bends like super far, right? Let's see. Yeah, look. It's because of how young you are. You don't see it, right? Because it's all the way down there. If you peek down, there may be something. You might have to find something a little bit further, like, ooh, this one goes to that, and maybe like point like an arrow, right? Like, ooh, there's my nose points over there. And if I turn here, it's like, oh, my nose only points over there. So it's a little bit of a difference that one is the other. Now, with feet flat on the ground, keep your feet flat on the ground and notice the thoracic rotation, right? Rotate. Where does your shoulder point on one side, and where does the shoulder point on the other side? And this is important to have a solid base. So you use your legs to make sure that you're not shifting through the pelvis to really give you an accurate description of what is your true thoracic mobility. Because if you've been shooting for a while, you probably turn really well to one side and perhaps the other side. Ooh, did you guys find that? So that's where our spine then, if our spine can't be centered, right? Let's say you shifted a little bit and you're rotating here because you're trying to set that shoulder, but why are you shifting like this? Oh, perhaps because you don't have enough core strength to hold yourself in the middle. So this is like a nice, like I'm just sitting here on my bones because my muscles don't have to do anything here. So initially, as you're aiming for that center, your shooting may sort of, right? Did you find that when we were working on it, right? It wasn't quite as accurate. By little, when you build up the accuracy, you're going to start to see that you're going to start to get better scores. I saw some hardware in your Facebook post, right? Yeah, and then you start to do better. He's showing off his cool medals. So finding that, like, oh, where is my center? So one of the things that I want you guys to take away from this is that posture is huge for not only the arrow trajectory, but the consistent and accurate arrow flight. This is where my research came into play, right? But it's all linked to posture, right? So we want to have that stabilized shot, right? To have it steady, to be accurate and consistent. Well, the more we can be consistent with our center, there's only one center, that's not centered, right? That's not centered, center three-dimensionally, the more consistent we can be with the arrow and the shooting. We also want to be efficient through the shooting platform. And so remember, if we use our leg muscles to stabilize here, our core muscles to stabilize the center instead of doing this or this, then the rotator cuff can do what they need to do to really hold everything together and keep the shoulder together because everything else is setting it up. So you're going to have less fatigue of the upper body if you're using your lower body to set that base. Okay? And then the other part is we were talking about dropping the bow onto the collarbone. That's sort of a term that I saw that doesn't quite make sense in my physical therapy brain. Like I can see it linked together. Is that a thing that is said, like drop the shoulder on the collarbone? How would you call it?
You're supposed to shoot with a low shoulder.
With a low shoulder, yeah.
when you draw back, your shoulders come up if you breathe in, but then you let your breath out, and then your shoulders will come down.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, the term I heard was like roll your shoulders. So that's the other thing. It
Mm-hmm.
kind of lock in.
Yes. So it's putting it down, right? But putting that shoulder down doesn't mean put the shoulder down. It's here, not here, right?
Relax it into a normal position.
Yes. And so normal position is great if it's relaxed, but if we're used to sitting in front of the desk for a long time, or this is tight just because we do a lot of forward stuff, this is normal for your skeleton. And when the shoulders are forward, as we noticed, not a lot of movement can happen. You're going to impinge that rotator cuff, and you're just not going to have as much space as when you're here.
With the injury to my shoulder, I can't keep it down anymore. I don't know if it's my body trying to protect itself, but as soon as I start to draw, it rolls, and I can't keep it down no matter what I do. I start in a low position. As soon as I get up, it just rolls over.
And so this, I wasn't gonna touch on that, but this is a great sort of segue to, I'm gonna sneak it in. And I want you to get your partners too, and notice you're gonna stand one facing the other, and you're gonna do this. And I want you to notice, do their shoulders go up? Do they immediately go up, or do they stay down and maybe go up at the end? Try it. Just try it real quick. Just sort of stand or sit and just move up a little bit. And notice it in your partner, because this is a visual thing. So the shoulder didn't go up, but your head stuck forward. So what happens when your head stays back?
I don't have a partner. Can you
Yeah.
me, I guess?
Yeah.
So just like this.
Uh-huh. That was pretty good.
Okay.
Uh-huh. So can you feel your shoulder blades staying?
No, they're
down?
rolling a little.
They're going to roll,
Okay.
but they're not doing this.
Right, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so you're doing a nice job.
Okay.
Yeah? So these are the muscles that we want to relax.
Okay.
Try it again. And notice that the shoulder blades, that these upper traps, that's it, are relaxed. Can you bring your arms up without getting these super tight? Because that's another one. These are the ones that we want to stay relaxed. Can you, yeah, there you go. Now you set the shoulder blade. Uh-huh. Did you guys get to relax those shoulders? Uh-huh. Are these, when you go up there, can these muscles stay relaxed? I don't know. Oh, you can do it with, yeah. So, relax it. Don't let these fire up so much. These, relax. And hold it. Let's hold the arms up there. Hold it there. Hold it. Don't move anymore. Can you relax these upper traps? Exactly. Can you relax these upper traps? Try it again. These. Don't let these fire up so much, because these are going up into your neck. Try it. Ready? Go ahead. Do it again. Let go. Some of you may not be able to let go of those muscles because of where your scapula is. If your scapula is forward, they're just going to fire right away. Some people that have more mobility through the chest are going to be there, and it's not going to fire, because you're going to be using your scapular muscles like a steering wheel instead of just your upper traps. Yeah? Good. So we were talking about the upper traps. You guys can sit. Thank you. Thank you. So if we are used to, for whatever reason, life got you to a place that your shoulder blades are slightly forward, your upper traps are going to be driving the movement. And it's going to end up impossible, like, oh my God, relax, right? It's like working really hard. Part of it is because the serratus muscle, it's a muscle that goes from underneath the shoulder blade into your ribs. That's the muscle that's bringing it down. That and the lower trap. So for the shoulder blade, it's not just the serratus, the muscle that's underneath. You know, boxers that have the little ridges, that's the serratus muscle. It goes into the ribs and underneath the shoulder blade. And then the lower trap, which comes down, I draw it because I show my patients a lot. The lower trap pulls that shoulder blade down. So it's kind of like, in order for the arm to go up, the lower trap has to pull that scapula down, and it keeps the subacromial space open. When you've had pain for so long, right, it just protects you. And you just drive movement like this. I'm going to reach, because now this movement is initiating instead of the rotator cuff stabilizing, and then the scapula doing the lifting. So it's breaking that pattern, because it's not just strengthening, it's stretching the front, okay? So sometimes it's not just straight up muscle strength, because the other thing I noticed it over there, that is like, oh, I brought it down. And then what happened, I noticed this through here. It's like down. Then all of a sudden, the lower thoracic and lumbar spine were here. So it's like, you have to have control to not have your ribs come and stick forward, to stay there and keep the scapula down. That's a whole other sort of dissociating the scapular movement from the thoracic spine and the scapular movement from the glenohumeral or shoulder muscle. So one of the things I wanted you guys to, I encourage you to get a partner while you're shooting and just sort of notice a few of those movements. We just did simple arm and shoulder movements. And take a time and notice, like, when the next time you pick up your bow and arrows, when I bring everything up, what's happening here? Am I doing something like this to draw? Right? And just because time and gravity have done their thing on our physical bodies, right? Because mental body would probably, like, I still feel like I'm in my 20s sometime, and I'm a couple of decades older than that. It doesn't mean that we have to, there's ways to accommodate for it. If our thoracic or our cervical spine doesn't do this anymore, there's other ways to accommodate. It doesn't have to be perfectly aligned. It just means that you might have to work out a little bit more than the other so that you don't have injuries and issues. And it's never too late. You can always do spine mobility exercises in the mornings. So if you want to learn a little bit more about spine mobility, if you go on our Fluid Physio YouTube page, I have tons of videos in there. You can search spine mobility, and there's some for lumbar spine and thoracic spine and necks that you can do in the morning when you first wake up, because that's something to do every day, little by little, to stay as mobile as possible and to gain some mobility. And then when you finish shooting, okay, I'm going to take some time, whether it's on the ground here, when you get home, on the bed, I'm going to be on the ground and I'm going to open up to the opposite side, because I've done so much to one side that we want to keep that balance to minimize shoulder injuries, neck injuries, headaches, and all that other stuff. So this is it. So get with a partner, spend some time noticing what your body's doing and feeling it, and noticing if you can make some changes. You can put a little recording. Sometimes I'll tell people, set up like you're going to do a selfie with your phone. Set it up and see what you do. Do a little recording and then watch it. For physical therapy, we are located in Lawrenceville. So it's about, how long would you say from here? 20 minutes? Yeah. And what we do, we work on a one-to-one basis, so we're out of network so that we can really look at your whole body. As I said, just because Vano's neck was hurting, we found all these other things that helped overall not bring that neck pain back. And we offer a 30-minute free screen where we can then schedule with me. I have 2 other physical therapists that work with me, and really take 30 minutes free, tell us what is your pain and issue, because oftentimes it's the pain that finally gets us to do something about it, and sort of discuss how is it that we would attack it if you've done physical therapy before, but it hasn't worked out. Why? Maybe you relieved the shoulder pain, but you never dealt with the core strength. That if you wanted to set one up and you're interested, You can write down your name. I think I have some information already. And then I'll have my front office, Katerina, who's also my sister. She can give you a call at the time that you're more available and set up the 30 minutes to check things out. If you already have an awesome physical therapist, that might be another one. You don't have to use your healthcare insurance to your advantage. It doesn't have to be before or when you have the pain. Do something before it. Like, what is the best way that I can keep myself moving, right? If you are younger and you're like, well, I don't really have any issues, there's something that you can still have a physical therapist. It's going to be having been a strength and conditioning coach, it's like you have a different set of glasses. It's like I can see people with my strength and conditioning coach eyes, but when I got my PT degree, you see things in a different way. And then I was specialized in orthopedics, so then it's like a little bit extra. And because you can go to a strength and conditioning coach or your archery coach, they can give you some pointers. And then with your physical therapist, then they can see how it relates to movement and not just muscles and bones. Because it's movement patterns and movement mechanics that you didn't realize that perhaps strength isn't your thing. It's just the movement pattern that we have to break this. It's like, oh, I have to do tiny little movements and retrain the movement component. And that's it. Did you guys get your money's worth?
Yeah.
I have recorded this live. It'll be on our on our YouTube page. It's recorded there. So if there's someone that you know that could use it, or if you wanted to go back and review it, it'll be up there. And any questions that you may have, I want to be mindful of everybody. So if you have specific questions, then for yourself, like my body, my shoulder, me, then I'll be happy to do it later. But anything that you're sort of unclear about that you think might be helpful to everyone else?
It sounds like after every archery session that we do here, should we dedicate 10 minutes to doing movements in the opposite direction? Maybe once we get home, maybe pulling your band.
Yes, maybe even 5 minutes, right? Perhaps it's something that you just do right here, like you put your stuff in your bag and then, oh, I'm down here putting the stuff in my bag. Great, I'm going to do it with my other side. And while I do it, I'm just going to rotate a little bit, because once you get home, life is going to take over. And then it's like, at home, you might have a much more comfortable, the bed or the mat, or I roll on the ground wherever because I'm used to being and doing stuff. So I would be like, oh, right there. Sure. Come right here. I come on the side. Oh my God. Wait, that's the side. Other side. And just rotate. Oh, that feels so wonderful. What is the shoulder doing? This particular stretch is in the YouTube, because then you can move the arm in different directions. And it's not just, so this is thoracic spine mobility. Feels wonderful, right? This is lumbar mobility. And you can just do it real quick, couple times. And then neck mobility, looking to the other side, shoulders, do a little, whatever feels good. Your body will tell you. You don't necessarily need someone to say this and this and this. Some people may need that list. That's fine. But feel, what is it? Like, oh my God, like I just did that and it felt wonderful. I didn't do my stretches this morning. Yeah. And just a little bit. Mm-hmm. Cool? All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. I'm going to turn that off. And if you have some little questions, I'm sure I'm here. Okay, everyone, bye.
Bye. Thank you.
You're welcome. Let me turn this. I don't want to be live anymore. How do I stop myself from being live? Yes.